Let's just jump right into this explainer of Kate Chopin's classic 19th century story, A Respectable Woman. We're looking at a total masterclass in psychological tension today. You know, that incredibly fragile boundary between what we actually desire and what duty demands of us, and just how heavily society weighs on those choices. But hey, before we travel all the way back to the sugar plantations of Louisiana, let's actually start with a super relatable situation.
Have you ever judged a house guest before even meeting them? Seriously, just imagine it. Your partner invites a friend to stay for a week or two, completely wrecking your peaceful routine, right? And you instantly form this totally negative opinion before the person has even set foot in the door. We have all been there. Well, that is exactly the scenario where our protagonist, Mrs. Baroda, finds herself as our narrative kicks off.
Now, to really get inside her head, we have to understand the unbelievably strict stakes of her era. Back in the 19th century, society basically demanded that women be gentle, self-sacrificing, and above all else, fiercely protective of their family's honor. I mean, these oppressive rules dictated literally every single move on her quiet plantation. Being a quote-unquote respectable woman meant completely burying any complex personal feelings. So the big takeaway here, Mrs. Baroda isn't just fighting her own mind, she is going up against the entire societal code of her time.
So navigating this minefield of rules is our central trio. First up is Mrs. Baroda herself, an emotionally sensitive and highly morally responsible wife. Then there's her husband, Gaston, who's this friendly, practical, and incredibly trusting sugar planter. And finally, we have the guest, Gouverneur. He's Gaston's old college buddy, and he turns out to be the totally unexpected catalyst for this entire story.
The stark contrast between what Mrs. Baroda expected and the reality of this guy is absolutely crucial. She had unconsciously built him up in her head as this tall, slim, cynical snob wearing eyeglasses. But the reality? Gouverneur was just, well, lovable, inoffensive, quiet. He just sat there completely mute while she eagerly chatted away, pretty much ignoring all her attempts to entertain him. Honestly, the guy really just wanted to sit out by the Corinthian pillars and smoke his cigar in peace. And this perfectly illustrates how her initial annoyance rapidly snowballs into something else entirely. It's like on day one, she's just puzzled by his quiet personality. But by day 3, his indifference is definitely piquing her interest. And by day 7, she is actively forcing her company on him. She starts tagging along on his idle strolls down to the mill just to see if she can crack that unconscious reserve of his. It's a subtle shift, for sure, but a very, very dangerous curiosity is brewing.
She even confesses her frustration to her husband, Gaston. She actually tells him she'd like Gouverneur a whole lot better if he gave her some trouble, or if she at least had to plan for his comfort like a normal guest. And Gaston, well, he just tenderly laughs it off. He calls her full of surprises. The poor guy is completely, utterly blind to the fact that his wife's quote-unquote annoyance is rapidly spiraling into a massive, deep internal crisis.
Well, everything finally comes to a head one particularly romantic evening. I want you to picture this scene. It's a bench beneath a massive live oak tree, shrouded in darkness with these warm south winds blowing. Then, you see the approaching red point of a lighted cigar. Mrs. Baroda is sitting there alone in the dark, already overwhelmed by this incredibly confused, totally inexplicable need to just run away to the city. And right at that moment, Gouverneur walks up and sits down beside her. As he sits there, his usual stony silence just sort of melts away. He starts talking intimately in this low drawl about his college days, his whole philosophy on life, even quoting poetry out to the night sky. But here's the thing. Mrs. Baroda isn't even processing his words. Her physical being just completely takes over. She gets slammed by this shocking, intense impulse to touch his face and his lips. She just wants to draw close to him, risking losing herself entirely to that one single moment. She is gripped by an absolutely massive temptation. And you have to remember, in her specific world, this temptation directly challenges her very core identity. It threatens literally everything she's ever been taught about duty, about marital loyalty, and that super rigid 19th century social code we talked about earlier. To give into this desire, that would mean completely obliterating the respectable woman she is expected to be.
Recognizing the incredibly intense danger of her own desires, Mrs. Baroda executes a swift, highly calculated retreat. First, she carefully draws away, just to avoid looking totally rude. Next, she just leaves him sitting there alone on the bench, right in the middle of the conversation. And the final move? She hops on an early morning train to the city before her husband even wakes up. She absolutely refuses to return home until Gouvernail is completely gone.
And this quote right here perfectly captures her deep psychological isolation. She is so desperately tempted to just tell her husband all about this crazy folly that seized her, especially since she genuinely considers him a friend. But then it hits her. This is a strictly internal war. It's human nature versus societal expectations. She has to bear this heavy burden completely quietly because, well, a respectable woman simply does not speak of such things.
So the aftermath is basically marked by extreme, strict avoidance. For months, Gaston is practically begging to invite his dear friend back to the plantation for the summer. But Mrs. Baroda actively dodges the source of her temptation, strenuously fighting her husband's wish. She is keeping the fortress of her respectability locked down incredibly tight. No exceptions.
But then, and I love this, comes the brilliant twist of our story. Right before the year ends, she completely changes her tune. Out of nowhere, she proposes, entirely on her own, that Gouvernail should actually come visit them again. Gaston is of course surprised and totally delighted, just assuming she's finally gotten over her weird initial dislike of the poor guy.
But this sudden change of heart culminates in what has to be one of the most famous, highly ambiguous final statements ever. After pressing this long, tender kiss right on her husband's lips, she just laughs and says, "Oh, I have overcome everything. You will see. This time, I shall be very nice to him." I mean, wow. It is an absolutely incredible cliffhanger from Kate Chopin. It completely reframes every single thing we thought we knew about her internal struggle.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final, incredibly provocative thought to ponder. When Mrs. Baroda said she overcame everything, did she conquer her improper temptations so she could remain a so-called respectable woman? Or did she finally conquer her fear of giving into that temptation? It's such a fascinating look at human nature. Definitely something to chew on the next time you find yourself caught in a battle between what you truly want and what society completely expects of you.